People in Dodge City said she deserved to drown. That was the first thing I heard when Eliza Monroe stumbled into the Arkansas River with half the town laughing behind her. The sun was burning hot, the water was cold, and the look on her face said she knew no one was coming to help. Except one man did. A man the town called cold as a winter rock. A man who had not touched another soul since his wife died 8 years back. Caleb Ward, 45, rancher, hard as rawhide and built like the kind of trouble you do not want to test twice. He was riding the edge of the bank when he saw her slip. She had been carrying a basket of finished shirts. The boys on Front Street had been catcalling her again. Calling her Wet Liz, saying she always had water on her, sweat, tears, rain, anything they could twist into a joke. Eliza was only 24. Too young to be worn down like that, too young to walk with her shoulders tight like she expected every breath to hurt. But the town had decided she was nothing. Poor girl. Orphan thrift store dress, hands rough from sewing for folks who barely said thank you. Caleb saw her fall. He dropped out of the saddle in one long step, hit the river, and grabbed her before the current could take her skirt under. Her shirt was soaked in a heartbeat, clinging tight, her chest rising fast, her hair licked across her face. She gasped when he pulled her close, shocked, shivering, breathing hard. He held her steady with those big hands. Hands that looked like they could break a man in half, but somehow treated her like she was spun glass. His voice came low close to her ear. "Stay still. You are all right. Just breathe." But she did not breathe. Not right away. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide. And then she blurted it without thinking. "You are getting me all wet." The line froze him for a second. Maybe because it sounded like something it was not. Maybe because it was the first time anyone had spoken to him like that in years. And maybe because the whole town was staring at them from the bank. Laughing, pointing, whispering. Caleb tightened his grip. Not to claim her, not to shame her, but to keep her upright while the world tried to shove her under. She looked up at him, her voice shaking. "Why did you help me?" He looked back at her, jaw set, eyes dark. "Because someone should have a long time ago." He walked her to the shore with one arm around her, his horse drinking quietly beside them. Eliza standing there dripping through her thin cotton blouse. Caleb dripping too from the waist to down. The town watching like they had just witnessed sin. And right there in that moment, something shifted between them. Something neither one of them understood yet. Something that Silas McGraw, the most dangerous man in Kansas, was about to use against them both. But Eliza had no idea. Not yet. Here's the question. If a whole town has already decided a woman is worthless, what happens when the one man they fear decides she is worth everything? Eliza kept shaking after Caleb pulled her out of the river. Cold water ran off her chin. Her cotton shirt clung tight. People still whispered on the bank. They were not whispering kindness. Caleb handed her his coat. Warm, heavy, smelled like horses and cedar. She pulled it tight around herself and kept her eyes down. Maybe if she did not look at the crowd, they would stop looking at her. But Dodge City folks never stopped staring when they found a new target. Caleb led her toward his horse. Slow, gentle, like he feared she might break. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, but her lips said no, even when her head said yes. That was when Silas McGraw stepped out a Long Branch saloon. He walked like he owned the whole town. Some days he did. Silas had money, land, water rights, and men who followed him for free. Whiskey. He had a smile that made honest folks nervous and a temper that turned cowboys into dust. The moment he saw Eliza wrapped in Caleb's coat, he grinned. A slow, mean grin. Well, now if it ain't Wet Liz finding new ways to soak herself. Eliza froze. Caleb did not. He shifted in front of her, not talking, not threatening. Just blocking Silas like a wall of muscle and patience. Silas hated patience. It made him feel small. Silas stepped closer. "You know, she had a job at the tailor shop this morning." Caleb nodded once. "Not anymore. They kicked her out. Said she embarrassed the place. Said she brought shame on the women. Said men were staring too much." Silas laughed. "Can you imagine? A girl not worth a nickel making a whole town blush." Eliza tried to step back, but her boots slipped in the mud. Caleb steadied her, his hand firm on her elbow. "Easy now." Silas tilted his head like he was sizing up cattle. "You lost your job, sweetheart. That is rough. But I got space at my ranch. You come work for me." You get a bed, meals, maybe even a little respect if you learn to smile, right? Eliza felt her stomach twist. Silas never offered anything without a trap tied to it. Caleb knew it, too. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Silas noticed, which made him smile even harder. Silas leaned in real close to Eliza. I can fix your name, little girl, or I can ruin it for good. Depends how much you want to stay dry. Caleb stepped between them again. He did not shove, did not shout. He just stood there steady, solid, a man telling the world enough without a single word. Silas chuckled and walked off, but he looked back once, and that look said trouble was coming. Big trouble. Eliza clutched Caleb's coat tighter, her voice small. What does he want from me? Caleb watched Silas disappear into the saloon. The air around him felt heavier, darker. He sighed. Not what he wants, what he plans. And here's the question you should be asking. When a man like Silas sets his eyes on a girl like Eliza, how far will he go to break her for good? Silas did not come after Eliza right away. Men like him do not rush. They wait. They watch. They pick the moment that hurts the most. And for Eliza, that moment came 2 nights later. The moon was low. The heat still clung to the grass. Crickets loud enough to cover a scream. Eliza had been sitting behind the stable at Caleb's ranch, trying to sew a tear in one of his shirts, trying not to think about the way Silas smiled at her in town. Then she heard boots in the dirt. Slow, heavy, wrong. She stood fast, her breath tight. She thought it might be Caleb returning from fencing the south pasture. But Caleb never walked like that. Never dragged his heel. Never whistled in that low snake kind of way. 3 men stepped from the dark. Silas men, the same ones who laughed at her in Dodge City, their eyes already saying what their mouths had not said yet. Evening, sweetheart. Boss says we need a little talk. Eliza backed up until her shoulders hit the stable wall. One man reached for her arm. Not rough yet, but rough was coming. She knew it. Any woman in the West knew it. And she did the only thing she could. She ran. She darted across the yard. Barefoot, faster than she thought she could move. Her skirt snagged on a fence post, but she ripped free and kept going. She headed straight for the river. If she could get across the shallow bend, she could make it to the cottonwoods. Silas men hated walking through brush behind her. They shouted, laughed, shot once into the air just to scare her, and it worked. She stumbled when the echo rolled across the water, but that single gunshot carried farther than they intended, all the way to Caleb. He was half a mile west. He heard it straighten fast and his horse was running. Before he even got his boot in the stirrup, Eliza reached the river first. She stepped in. Cold water bit her legs. She gasped hard. Her feet slipped on smooth stones. Then she saw movement up the bank. A rider charging. For 1 second, she thought it was another one of Silas' men. Then the moon hit his hat. His shoulders. The shape of him she could recognize anywhere now. Caleb. He swung off the saddle before his horse even stopped, grabbed her waist, and pulled her deeper into the river. Not to drown her, to hide her. The reeds were tall, the water dark, his chest pressed against her back. She held on to his forearms just to stay standing. He whispered close, quiet now. Stay low. They cannot shoot what they cannot see. Her heart beat so loud she swore the whole county could hear it. The water climbed to her ribs. Her shirt clung again. She felt him breathing behind her. Steady, calm, like he had done this kind of thing 100 times. Silas men reached the bank. They scanned the river, argued about tracks. One wanted to cross, one refused. The third spat and said she was not worth wet boots. They left cussing, the sound fading into the grass. Eliza finally turned to Caleb, her voice barely a breath. Why do you keep saving me? He wiped water from her cheek. Because you keep needing it and because he ain't done yet. Before we move on, if you are liking this story, tap subscribe to ride with us through the rest of this tale. Grab a warm drink and stay with me. Tell me what time it is, where you are, and what place you are listening from. Caleb kept Eliza in the river until the last hoofprint faded. Only when the night fell quiet, he guided her back to shore. She was shaking so hard her teeth clicked. Not from the cold, from knowing Silas would not stop. Men like him never did. Caleb saddled his horse and lifted her up with one arm. Sit tight. We are heading to town. His voice was steady. Too steady. The kind of steady a man used right before something broke inside him. Dodge City was loud as always. Music from Long Branch. Cards slapping on tables. Men laughing because whiskey makes everything funny until it does not. The moment Caleb walked in with Eliza behind him, the room went silent. Every head turned, eyes narrowed. Whispers rose like smoke. Wet Liz is back. Look at her shirt. Look who she is hiding behind now. Eliza kept her face down. She felt every stare like a thorn under her skin. Caleb stood beside her, shoulders squared, ready for whatever came next. Then Silas stepped out from a corner booth. He clapped slow, mocking, loud enough to cut through the music. Well, look here. The river couple. How sweet. He walked toward them, not fast and not slow, just enough to make everyone watch. You know, a girl like her could cause a man trouble, said, his grin sharp. Town folks losing sleep, talking about her. Men losing money, betting what she'll do next. Women saying she's a curse. Eliza flinched. Caleb saw it. Silas saw it, too. Which made him push harder. Tell you what, Caleb, I will take her off your hands. She comes work for me. I clear her name. I shut folks up. Fair trade. You keep your little river secret. Caleb did not speak, but the look in his eyes said everything. Silas leaned in closer to Eliza. You hear that, sweetheart? I can save you. Or I can break you. Your choice. Eliza tried to step back. Silas grabbed her wrist. Not gentle, not hidden. Right there in front of everybody. And that was when Caleb moved. Fast, sharp, unstoppable. He yanked Silas' hand off her, shoved him back so hard chairs scraped the floor. Then one of Silas' men grabbed Caleb from the side. Caleb spun and drove his fist straight into the man's ribs. Another one smashed a fist into Caleb's jaw and his ears rang hard. He staggered for a breath, but he did not back up. He planted his boots and came right back at him. A man fighting for something he refused to lose. The crack echoed. Men shouted, tables tipped, whiskey spilled. Eliza screamed his name, but Caleb was already standing between her and every danger in that room, breathing hard, ready for all of them. Silas wiped blood from his lip, his voice dropped low. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, old man. Caleb did not blink. Maybe, but I will not watch you hurt her. Not again. The bar fell into dead silence. Dead enough to hear a match drop. Dead enough to know this fight was far from over. And here's what you should be wondering now. After a man like Caleb finally stands up to a devil like Silas, what price will he pay for it before the sun comes up again? Caleb stood in the middle of that saloon, his fist tight, his breath rough, the whole room watching like they were waiting for blood. Silas stared back at him with eyes cold enough to freeze a river. For a moment, it felt like the whole world had stopped turning. Then the sheriff walked in. Gray hat, tired face. Turns out the sheriff had been watching Silas quietly for days. Someone had slipped him a letter. A ranch wife finally fed up with Silas' threats. Another worker at the courthouse had seen Silas forge a signature. The sheriff had been waiting for a moment like this to bring everything into the open. A man who had seen enough trouble for 3 lifetimes. He looked at Silas, looked at Caleb, looked at Eliza, still shaking behind him. What in the world happened here? The sheriff asked. The whole room went quiet. Silas opened his mouth, but the sheriff raised a hand. Not you. I already heard the stories. I know what you've been doing. Turns out folks had been talking quietly, carefully. Enough people had seen Silas' men sneaking around Caleb's ranch. Enough people had seen Eliza running. Enough people had heard Silas make threats drunk at his poker table. The sheriff stepped closer. Silas McGraw, you forged land document. You coerced a woman and you set your boys on Caleb's property. I got statements. I got witnesses. And I got enough reason to lock you in a cell till winter. The room erupted. Some gasped, some cheered. Some ducked away from Silas' glare like it might burn them. Silas lunged once. Sheriff drew faster. In a blink, Silas was on the floor with cuffs around his wrist. His reign ended right there on the saloon board. When they dragged him out the door, the room finally breathed again. Like a storm had passed, like the weight of a whole town had lifted a little. Eliza stepped toward Caleb, her voice soft. You could have died for me. He shook his head. No, I live for you. The people who once mocked her now watched in silence. A few still whispered Wet Liz under their breath. A couple of old women kept their arms crossed tight like they still did not trust her. But no one dared say anything loud this time. Not with Caleb standing there like a storm waiting to break. Some with regret, some with awe, some with the kind of respect she had never tasted a single day of her life. Caleb walked her outside. The warm summer wind moved through the cottonwoods. The river echoed in the dark. Her hands were still shaking. The fear did not disappear. But she reached for Caleb's hand anyway. Not because she felt fearless, but because she finally trusted someone would not let her fall. Eliza looked at him with eyes she did not hide anymore. "What happens now?" she asked. He smiled. "Now you start living the life they told you you never deserved. And you let me stand beside you through every bit of it." That night, Eliza slept without locking the door for the first time in her life. Caleb sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, watching the road, listening to the wind, knowing trouble might still come. But if it did, he would be ready. The town would whisper again tomorrow. Towns like this always do. But from now on, every whisper would pause for one small reason.